Hi, this is Jamie Heiberger of Heiberger & Associates, and we are live today on Facebook to talk about leases. There are different kinds of leases that can be used in New York City, and for today I'm going to focus on renters of co-ops and condominium units, and the key points that you as brokers definitely want to know. There's a couple of things. First of all, we all know from the outset, as a broker, do not draft your own leases and do not draft your own lease writers. Instead, it's okay. You could fill in the blanks and you could use writers that have already been created for you, or you can have a lawyer draft them for you to attach to your leases. Now, oftentimes I get asked the question, what happens when a lease is signed, the board package is submitted, but it has not yet been approved, and the tenant turns around and wants to cancel the lease? The answer is this. Depending upon whether or not all of the terms of a lease being binding have been met will dictate whether or not the tenant can cancel the lease. Oftentimes I find, and I've been hearing this a lot lately, that brokers are not returning the countersigned leases to the tenants after they have been signed by the owner, and instead are holding on to them in anticipation of receiving the board approval. Now, while that's fine that we don't go forward and cash checks, you really want to make sure that immediately upon the tenant signing and tendering the monies to you, once the owner countersigns the lease, it must be returned to the tenant. If the lease is not returned to the tenant countersigned, then there is no delivery and the lease is not valid. What does that mean? That means that now your tenant, who either circumstances have changed while they've been waiting for the board to issue the approval, now has the opportunity to say that they want their money back, and they will be allowed to get their money back. Now we get to the situation where the lease was returned. What do you do then when the tenants change their mind? It was returned to them, but the board hasn't issued their approval, and now the tenant wants to cancel. Then it's really up to your company. Different brokerages have different policies on how they want to deal with these things, whether or not the tenant has actually moved in, what the circumstances are surrounding why the tenant wants to cancel their lease. But as long as the landlord has met all of its obligations and its requirements on what's required for a binding lease, technically speaking, subject to approval, once it's approved, assuming it's approved, I should say, then it would be binding. Now, there are two different kinds of leases. We have the Rebney and the Bloomberg, which leads me to a question that was asked to me by one of you prior to this morning, and that was, what do I think? Do we use the Rebney or do we use the Bloomberg lease? And my personal opinion is that when it comes to co-ops and condos, I would recommend that with the I just want to look for the form. Okay. I would recommend using the Bloomberg leases for the owner of a condominium. The reason being that there are specific provisions that protect an owner specifically. In fact, if we look at the Bloomberg form lease, which I happen to have a copy of it right here, it provides, in paragraph 11 specifically provides that there's access and entry allowed to the owner during the course of the lease, and that's indicated on paragraph 11 to the actual condo lease itself. Additionally, and most importantly, paragraph number 17, which is the second page of the condo lease form, allows for the owner of the condo to cancel the lease in the event that they decide to sell, and they only have to give 30 days notice. The last provision that I find really beneficial in the Bloomberg condo lease form is paragraph number 42. Paragraph 42 specifically provides that in the event of an increase in taxes or common charges, that the owner can pass it on to the tenant. Now, conversely, if you are representing the tenant in a transaction, then you would want to cross off paragraph 17 and paragraph 42. And probably limit access that's given in paragraph 11. Now, if you are the tenant and you're representing the tenant in a transaction, then I would recommend, instead of the Bloomberg condo lease, the Rebney condo lease. Because they do not have the right to cancel upon sale, and there is not a requirement of an increase in taxes or common charges should there be an increase for the owner. So on the condo side, the owner wants the Bloomberg lease, the tenant wants the revenue lease. Now with the co-ops, I highly recommend that the owners use the revenue lease forms for both co-ops and condos. The condo form is very similar to that of the condo form for revenue. So the co-op and condo are very similar, the provisions are very similar, and there are better protection on the co-op side for revenue. For the tenant, for a co-op, I would go with the Bloomberg form. And that's it today on leases. We'll continue, and if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me anytime. And I'll see you next in another couple of weeks.